at this time of year, there's a lot of applications for schools of architecture, and many times students will contact me by email and say, you know, you've said about portfolio, but we don't know quite what we want to do. What do we do for a school of architecture? What would they be interested in? And so it's often that students come from different backgrounds for architecture. You might have come from humanities, you might have done art and design, you might have done languages, you might be science, maths, or whatever. And as you're probably aware, you know, architecture isn't taught at schools prior to university. You may be lucky that you may have some teachers that are very interested in the subject area, and they may encourage you through maybe a geography project or whatever to take part and write something about maybe a cityscape or, you know, urban development or whatever. So so on the background of that, many students then say, well, you know, we're not sure what to put in a portfolio. Do I have to have art and design to apply for architecture? The answer to that is no. And you may not have done A-level art, you may not have done design technology or anything, but you may have. So I was trying to be as helpful as possible by saying, what are the top tips for somebody wanting to do architecture? So on this board, this is a Miro board that we use as a platform to communicate with our students, maybe on online situations. If we're teaching online, we're back face to face at the moment with our students. So I was going to run through the 5 top tips, give you some examples, and then give you a chance to ask questions about our course in particular to myself and Ryan, who's also my colleague here, and Thanos is in the background, sort of sorting out and orchestrating all the links with everybody, as she's done so brilliantly well so far. So on further ado, I'll continue. So on this Miro board, I've got a portfolio. What you need is something as a series. It may be a physical portfolio. It may be something in sketchbook or even a flat folder or whatever else. It may not be. It may be a digital portfolio. It may be something that you've collected and you've done digital work. You may have done Photoshop. You may have done sketches or photographs or whatever. So I would say you have a portfolio, loosely termed portfolio, with a lot of variety. Now, if you've got something which is then the what I call the ingredients of that portfolio, what is it? So we've got drawings, maybe paintings. You may have done art from when you were 5 or 6. That's all relevant, believe it or not, because, you know, many people with choices at school, it's very difficult if you begin through a school system. You have to pick subjects, and that subject then ends up putting you in pigeonholes. And sometimes then you might lose things that you had as hobbies outside of school, interests and clubs that you were joined. But actually for us, it's a great indicator of your general awareness of the built environment, maybe of nature or whatever, the natural world, holidays you've been to visit places you've been inspired by. They're all part of your background. They're all sort of your recording, if you see what I mean. They may be your favorite photographs of things that you've taken of particular interest, because it's your eye we're interested in. It's your take on the world that is the most important thing. So tip number 1 would be, let's have variety of work. Now, it could include photography. If you may, I mean, digital cameras and these great phones these days, they can do all sorts of stuff. You know, we had to get a 35mm film and an SLL camera once and click, click, click and get it developed. And that was always a surprise, because you never know what was going to come back. But with digital cameras and mobile phones and things, you've got the opportunity to really collect information, provide information that, you know, could inspire a piece of art, or maybe a collage, or maybe a video that you've made, or something to sell a product. It's all relevant. All right. So 3D work you may have done. You may have built physical models. You may have helped your mum and dad build an extension. You may have done some work on the home. You may have remodeled your own bedroom and redesigned it. That is all relevant, believe it or not, to a portfolio. Model making, particularly, you know, people have made Airfix models. I mean, up above me, I've got a sort of, not a Millennium Falcon up on the shelf behind me, but I've got a Lego star set, which was constructed by my son about 8 or 9 years ago, and it's still floating above my head in this room. So that making process, the hand-eye connection, is really important in design. So look at some examples. You might then say, You might have drawings which are, I would call them loosely maybe doodles. They're like drawings on the back of a fag packet, used to say in the old days. They're on the backs of napkins and covers. Ryan's laughing there because he knows exactly. We've always done this. We've gone somewhere, you sat down with some friends and you said, how does it look? Oh, you doodle it like that. And they're important. It may be that you've got a bunch of Sharpies and you've coloured stuff at home, maybe a napkin at a dinner table, and it's an interesting form and shape. Take a photograph of it. It's often an inspiration for maybe even a design for something. You're thinking, what's the relevance this has got to architecture? It's about really expressing yourself. It's about getting ideas down on paper. And it's not about a finished product necessarily. It's about the whole process of making. So I'll give you some examples here. This is one where it's basically a collection of cutout ribbons of paper and extracts, which are formed in an interesting abstract collage, to put it politely. And yet it's got balance to it. It's got composition to it. It's got color mix. It's sort of interesting, and we're wondering what on earth is going on within this particular picture. It may be something abstract like another form of collage where you're taking shapes and forms from nature, and you may be imprinting them, you may be embossing them, you may be layering them into a form of montage, overlaying and spraying along some of the artists that you may have studied. I mean, we've all been influenced by artists, from the great classical artists through to Jackson Pollock, people like that, and Andy Goldsworthy in terms of nature artists or whatever else. You may have something where you've gone, this is one that my other colleague Liz is now going to laugh at, because it's one of her drawings that I put up here, where she's drawn an osprey as a portrait. So it might be from the natural world. So what? It's about balance, proportion, understanding composition, and looking at detail and how claws work, or its abstract form like this. I've got another one down, a couple more down here. This is a photograph showing different shades of light against a footpath and paving zones, which basically gives you the difference of light and shade. It could be texture. You could take themes of words and produce drawings from them. And I think this is, I just find that more exciting, and actually the generation of ideas and the flow of ideas like a tap could come. And the more you generate, the more paper you produce. Obviously, we'd like to be as sustainable as possible, maybe recycle things and maybe draw on the other side too. But actually, if I ask somebody to draw a cube, like I did with one of my students, Kieran, I just said, do a bunch of abstract cubes. They don't have to be perfect in your mind's eye of what you think a cube is. I want you to draw what you feel inside your head and put it down on paper. Or you might be taking patterns, repetitive patterns, and producing drawings like this. And this could be a circuit board, I don't know, for something in design technology that suddenly becomes a piece of design. And you talk about color recognition and color balance within the layout in a formal piece of geometry. Now, this could be a series of buildings that are pods that are linked together, looking down on plan in the future. It could be a number of things, a design for a new LED light shade. I think there's applications with art and design to express ideas, get them down. There might be things that you love that you've drawn, like student Bethan did here with her dog. I mean, getting all the teeth right is one of the things, and you wonder whether dogs had some dentures put in or not. But a dog has 42 teeth. I found out. I found that interesting to know. I didn't know that, but now I've got the proof, because I could probably add them up here. Or you may have positive, negative shapes. Like, this is a theme of mechanical that Katie's done. There's a few Katie drawings on here. As I was pulling a leg, and I said, I borrowed a few of your drawings to show some potential students. And she said, don't, they're rubbish. And I said, no, they're not. They're all part of what you do. And I like them. And I put them up here because they're things I respect. So when you send stuff in to tutors, don't be there. I'm not like somebody from the Tate Gallery saying, well, it's just not the right technique. I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for your enthusiasm on paper or whatever media you're using. It's your enthusiasm that makes the difference. It can be a really simple drawing. It could be something like this. It could be a dream view. This is thinking about, those buildings I looked at across. This is a simple sketch. clouds, background, color. We sort of imply that there's trees in the foreground, there are clouds in the background, all part of really gives me a feel for a city. You know, architecture can be depicted in the sharp buildings. It can be depicted in the rough sketch. It can be depicted by chosen photographs that you've taken. I like this one because it's co-op 3 times. It's co-op there, it's co-op there, and it's co-op reflected in the glass ceiling above it. And it's a standard street view. But what a difference you get by the contrast of dark and light. It may be you've walked down the street and you've taken a shot of a reflected part of a pavement and the white and the red, the yellow lines that go through the landscape at that time of night, at say 4 o'clock in the morning, to give you an idea of the atmosphere you can create with photography. Photography and architecture, look at these cityscapes, the reality of what we deal with in an everyday context. Even the contrast of, dare I say it, the everyday traffic light in the dark against the tonal backgrounds of buildings and the solitude of nighttime. It's moody and it's lonely, but it depicts an emotion, and we look for that with an architectural design. So that's tip number 1. That's quite a big tip, isn't it, to start off with? Second, number 2 tip is all about observational drawings. You've had observational pictures, but can you take an everyday object? I mean, I ask the students to draw with their dominant hand their other hand, and they all, are you serious? And I say, well, yeah, because I think if you can't observe your left hand if you're right-handed, or you can't observe your right hand if you're left-handed, then something's wrong, and it's there stuck to your arm, so you can draw it. It's not going to run away like a piece that, you know, like something in the wild. So it could be as simple as a knot of string, but look at the tones and the textures within this simple view. Like a large, I think Krusty Kreme would do well with this one as a donut type. Don't you think, right? I mean, if it was chocolate and somehow and they managed to get the textures in it, I'd be up for it. But you get the shadow cast from the object, and remember that an object has got light that reflects it somehow. It's dark and light, and that makes a big difference when generating a drawing. Show the reference. Sorry,
Ian. It looks like a ring of Oreo biscuits from where I'm looking.
It does, yeah, it does indeed. I actually have seen a donut like that, but I think it was rather decaying, maybe falling apart. Show the reference if you can for your drawing. So you've taken maybe a picture of the hand, or you've taken a picture of building through observation, or you've done a sketch of something. You could probably then try to relay that in a sketch. And I say practice in your own time, if not done at school. Often I found, and I'm sharing this with you, when I was at school, when I was doing I did A-level art, yeah, but I couldn't do anything at school. I mean, it's too much pressure from peer-to-peer pressure and things like that, and what the teachers were thinking. And actually, I wasn't enjoying it. So I enjoyed it at home. I did go in and prepare stuff, and I took it back into school. And I find that students often talk about maybe a bit of anxiety about can they work in an environment where they're in a shared environment. That's something we work on closely with the students in a studio environment, but you are working on your own design projects. So it's something just to get you into sketching, no matter how it is, simple forms, whether it's understanding how an arch comes together, if it's a Gothic or Romanesque arch, if it's a wheel, if it's a brooch, is it a piece of jewelry? We don't know. Is it just somebody displaying what's in their crazy head? I mean, it doesn't matter. So so keen to improve your life drawing skills, the everyday through observation. It could be using graphite. It can be using pencil. It could be using ink, acrylic. I mean, potato cutting, peelings. I mean, I don't know. I've probably used so many things. Tea bags I've used. That's been a common one. Something that you get an effect with that you can put on and peel off. Some of the PVA glues, some of the other stuff that you can utilize. Just get your expressions down. And I think one of the things, my criticisms of school had been from some of the students who have applied, they get stuck in a sketchbook of an A4 and A3. Yeah, we encourage sketchbooks, but we want you to go big. And when you go big, you get confident, because you've got to come from small to big. And it's all about building confidence through your careers, really. So keen to improve life drawing skills. This is a Bessemer converter, just showing some of the details of that and the close attention to detail for bolts and rivets and tones and shade. and composition and geometry. This one is something, again, that Katie's done, but this is Katie last year. I picked on Katie again because I saw her doing this in studio the other day. I asked her to do a detail of an existing building that we're looking at in one of our projects. And she said, I've done this one. What do you think? I said, well, can I take a photograph of it? She didn't know I'd taken a photograph of it sneakily. And then I put that up on Miro and she saw it today. So I showed her. But it's basically an outline, watercolor, basically a sort of top of a capital and doorway into a building, and so we've created part of that. She's now doing a measured drawing of that and scaling it in scale and then translating that to a bigger drawing, just the central area of that. So observation is really important. And I did say to her, she's focused on the capital, but actually the hinges are really cool too. So couldn't you have drawn that as well? And that was another thing. She said, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Sorry, Liz. You're on mute, by the way. Oh, no,
we talk about the 3 O's of architecture, don't we? Which is observation, ornament, and opinion.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. But when you're thinking, students are thinking about portfolio, I'm just thinking, just get and whatever you've got. It might seem crazy and it might be all over the place. People say, oh, it's not organized. I've seen some beautifully organized portfolios which have got themes running through it. That's fine. But actually, it's about the variety of work. I quite like it when you open a digital file that's been sent to you and you just don't know what's in it. And you can look through and go, oh, look at that. I mean, but the person who put it together has probably put a lot of thought into saying, oh, well, I've organized this and have I got enough variety? I'm just saying, try all these techniques to get your drawings. This one's a very much looser technique. It's sort of a sketch and it's got a bit of watercolor tone. And there's a bit of shadow. You might think, don't be intimidated by any of these drawings. They are from people who are inexperienced to people that are very experienced. And it doesn't matter. It's about you practicing. All I can say to you is, at my age, my eyesight was a lot sharper when I was younger, and I took it for granted. And now I got glasses and lenses. I've got to look a bit closer at stuff. But anyway, it's still fun. And it happened to Picasso too. Picasso got much broader and brushstroke later on in his life, but you can still be a great artist and whatever. And then, if you're rendering in pen and ink, because I do like ink drawings and tone washes to get the light shade and maybe the detail even of Gothic windows at the bottom. We're trying to get students to observe the quality of the architecture around them, picking up good examples and then trying to work through the cobbled streets that you see, the character of places, the character of people. I think interestingly also, I do like this drawing because it's like, the Doge's Palace or whatever, and it's got, it might be theatrical, it's Japanese, it's like fans, it looks like there's millions of people here, it's all drawn very loosely. I love that technique, quickly shaded, but you see the outlines of things and you can see some expression on the faces of the people in here. It's drawing attention to something or message. Or, as we often do in our course of architecture, is that you might take an everyday thing like a pair of trainers and you might be mad enough to cut it in half down the middle and you might draw it. Because one of the key drawings in architecture is a section. And a section through an object, if you cut an orange in half like Utzon did for the Sydney Opera House and maybe allegedly peeled back all the pieces of the orange to generate the idea for the Opera House, was one way of looking at it. But when you take an everyday object that we may have thrown away, and boy, if I chuck my trainers away, if I cut them in half, the stench would just be awful. So I don't do that because I've got so many old trainers. But, you can actually see the structure and form, you're guessing, underneath. And you're showing the tone and texture within it. Imagine if you were living inside this object, itty bitty ant, I guess. So, if it's a drawing like that, if we go to tip number 3, we want variety and richness. And that comes from some of the examples I've given you here. They're just trialing. People say, tutors may say, have you tried this technique? Have you tried ink on tracing paper? Have you tried acrylic on or acrylic paint on watercolor paper or card? Have you tried making physical models? I haven't moved on to that. I'm still keeping on some of the forms. If you're architecturally interested, you might be putting a pencil drawing down very quickly, drawing this in like 10 minutes, quick sketch. And if you've got some tones, you wham the colors on quickly. It's like 10 minutes, but it's impact. You know, I could say the drawing like this takes hours to put together, and it could do. But if you haven't got time for that, and we don't have time every day, we want to get stuff out quickly, we might have to go, let's go do a quick sketch. It's just as effective, it's just as emotional, but just try that technique and a perspective. This particular one is also working up on the idea that it's an imaginary shopping center of the future and people walking through it. We're looking for you to look for observation. We're then looking for ideas from design that you put together in your imagination that actually you can try and put down on paper. And that's incredibly difficult. I'm not saying that's not difficult, but for many artists, for people who are in the film industry, they may be looking at trying to generate Star Wars sketches of imaginary views in perspective and looking at tone. Remember, tone and paint and color doesn't have to be that specific. It just creates a mood of intensity of space. Architecture is about that. You may have looked at little maquette models that you cut out a card to generate three-dimensional forms. So, you know, what I'm saying is we're looking at really is this tip number 4, is to organize and arrange your portfolio. Now, you can do this afterwards. You might say, you know, these are my design sketches. They were my initial ones. These are my sort of worked up. These are my sort of final pieces. I know that's stressed. And what is a final piece? It might be something where you say, as Braque said, a work of art is just abandoned, isn't it? You know, it's never finished. And so does it matter if it's not finished? Leave it. If you feel you've gone as far as you can with it, don't overwork something. Just get it done and leave it and walk away. Come back to it 2 years later and you might tweak a bit, but don't worry about it. Just if that emotion has passed, if the need for that drawing is then gone, move on to something else. So show a chronology, if you like, through the process of your drawings in your portfolio. Always try and leave it in a clean and tidy manner. Don't roll up something. If you take a physical portfolio in, never roll drawings. Always have them in a flat portfolio. Have them in an ordered chronology if you can. It's always good if you're in an interview situation to be able to run through that and then carefully put it together. I did move away many years ago from A1 portfolio. I had an AO portfolio at one point. It was like when you went outside, you got blown away in the wind because it's like having a spinnaker on the front of you in a windy day. And I moved to an A3 portfolio, which is a little case with stuff in, and my drawings went in there. And I had some large drawings that I had reduced down, had them digitally copied and then reduced down just for the ease of showing people. I have to say, when it's students coming for architecture, it's great if they've got a digital portfolio because it doesn't matter so much. If it's a physical portfolio, it's lovely to have the real artwork in there, and or the original art, because you can't beat original art, can you? So much so, I went for an interview once, and the person interviewing me, I was so keen to take a piece of work with me. It was an oil painting that I'd done, that I had the oil painting in the portfolio protected and it was still wet. Okay. And when I said to the person, he said, is that your recent one? I said, yes. And it's still wet. He laughed. He said, I don't believe you. And I said, go on, you can stick your finger on it. And he did, and poked it and had some of the sort of going off oil paint on his fingertip. So I'm going to say to you, actually, it was a bit of a winner because it proved that it was original and it was still wet. So, so that was a chronology, sort of left it a bit late. Models are really useful, okay? The chronology is to show, I've just got an example up here. Here's an outline drawing, a quick outline sketch of a piece of work, showing the main parts of it in a one-point perspective as a sketch, laying out all the baselines. The second drawing down is the same drawing taken to the next stage. And this was using ink directly onto the sketch to work up the drawing. And so it's lacking in an intensity potentially. So the third drawing then is one which has become final, where ink wash is added to it, and the intensity and maybe the wildness of the tree, that's really the focals. The tree is a contrast here to the organization of the architecture. The Gothic architecture was based on the idea of tree and close to nature. So there's a sort of bit of play going on here. It is a one-point perspective to draw you into the scene, challenge you. So it's got a purpose. All drawings are communications, or models are, whether you're building a maquette model from little bits of block, polystyrene. If you're looking at stuff, I'm going to move that out of the way because that's another copy that went up there. Look at that, it's great. Move that out of the way. You've got little simple card blocks generating irregular forms, paper clips, simple things. The everyday object that generates ideas of how this ellipse works. How could it generate a piece of architecture? How does it generate a flow through the building of stressing the circulation within the design? How does light work with these objects? I've concentrated on the visual representation of drawn work, but let's get to talking about what physical models can do, and making things with your hands and putting glue together and bits of balsa wood or discarded card or yogurt pots to generate ideas is so easy because it's available and it's cheap. I'm not saying it's easy to create the ideas, it's easy to get hold of the waste material to use it, and we tend to. What I like about this particular model that was done by a student is that what you've got here is a card model with a light source behind it to create an atmosphere, almost like Close Encounters, if you've ever seen the film, and suddenly the light is there shining through the object as you walk towards it. But what I found was interesting was I actually found it better if I flipped it round the other way and turned it upside down to 180 degrees, because then you've got the light coming from behind it and above. I mean, I'd have to move the person onto the ground, but I thought that was equally as valid in terms of displaying the communication of the impact of light in a piece of model work that you can then create an atmospheric drawing from. If you're going to be a bit more organized, you might de-strip a model down. It could be anything. It might be a component for a radio. You might be designing product design, or you might be stripping something apart. You might be just putting an abstract form together. It doesn't matter. It's this simple card, a blade, and some glue holding it together. The drawings that generate that, the simple drawings, these are important sketches. Believe it or not, these are gold dust. Apart from this one's probably upside down. No, it's not upside down. It says that some bits of it are, because it was splayed out. Drawings like this, doodles, little drawings, little things that actually are big ideas, start to generate form. And in that, we'd love to see that. It's like the workings out in math. I don't want to know what the end result was. I want to know how you got there. And how can we help you in the process of developing your drawings through stages? Okay, so something we've done last summer was Sketch-A-Day project. I gave a theme out over a month every day, and then students did a drawing on that theme, and whatever they depicted was put into a Miro board, and we had a whole collection at the end of it. It was great at building confidence, because if you do small tasks, simple things with a theme, that is part of your portfolio, and suddenly you've done 10 days, you've got 10 drawings, you've got the body of work which is starting to grow. So that is my key tip on that one. And then finally, as I get to, I said I'd try to do this within half an hour to give us a bit of a chance of a chat. You don't want to listen to me all day. Explain your work. Why did you do it? How did you do it? And what did I want to achieve? So when we do something, we have an intention. So my intention is to build this model, and I don't know where I'm going with it. I don't care. That's what I was trying to do. I was trying to, for instance, explore ideas. I was trying to test my skills in drawing in ink, right? I wanted to test my freehand sketching. I wanted to do something really organized. I wanted to experiment with patterns and textures and form. And I remember a student that came into the university for an interview, and she'd done textiles and fashion. Okay, so she brought a dress in that she'd made with a mannequin, and I thought it was brilliant. I've never had a mannequin brought in as part of a portfolio with a dress on it. It wasn't a huge mannequin, but it was big enough to absolutely understand the design of the dress. And it was, it was beautifully done. and the drawings that she had in the portfolio would explain the whole process of how she got to making the dress and the technical problems of actually putting it together. A student came down and he'd made some communication thing through design technology, and he couldn't get it to work. We had a conversation on an open evening, open day, and we said, well, put a few buttons down here, and we give him some ideas about making the changes to the design. And that's what we do in Studio. So Studio is an iterative process of taking ideas and taking them forward. And what I've shown you here is really a collection of pretty much, if that was in a portfolio, then whatever grade you feel you're at, whatever stage you're at, it doesn't matter. It's all good for us to take on board. And that was it, really. Any questions? I mean, I've done a lot of stuff there, and I've spoken, but anybody got any views? Anybody like ask any questions about that process? You may be asking, and you may be wondering, what happens? What do the students do? They've done this as their portfolio that they may be bringing. I encourage them to keep a portfolio going all the way through their studies, so that you will see when you look back on it. Don't look back with embarrassment. I mean, I look back at some of the stuff I did, and you think, "Wow, that's amazing! Why did I do that? Really?" Look, it's all part of our development as people, and you reflect on things in life, and you come back to things, and you practice again. Never ever give up is probably the top tip, because it's all good, because it'll always be good. And remember, today you start again and you do another drawing, and it doesn't matter what happened yesterday, but today's drawing is this drawing, and that's the way to approach possibly my best tip for you going forward. Over to the team. Anybody want to make any comments on that? Do you concur with that, Liz? Roy?
That was very comprehensive, Ian. I do think that a portfolio for architecture is can be widely diverse. The number of times that I get asked questions, not just about subjects specifically for A-level study, but always, what do I need for a portfolio? Should I be doing drafting plans for houses and things like that? In fact, I'd rather not see that sort of thing, because that's the sort of thing that you'll learn when you come to a school of architecture. I'd rather see your creativity, your artistic flair. Show us who you are. Don't worry about who you want to be. I think I agree with that, actually.
There's I mean, Liz has been doing drawings and this process, and I think you've enjoyed that whole task, haven't you, Liz? In your books and your sketches that you're doing through the process.
What I found really interesting, Ian, which I don't know if you alluded to just a minute ago, was when I started drawing I thought I'd do the challenge a day, and I'm one of the lecturing team, but I just thought I should improve my drawing skills. So the osprey that you showed was actually the first thing I ever drew, and I couldn't see it, but other people said there was a progression in my drawings, because I made myself sit down every day for about an hour and do a drawing on the theme, and then I continued doing that in September and then throughout the year, and I'm still doing it on a theme, and I've just chosen whatever the theme is, and then I just do a drawing. And I'm now at a stage when people are saying to me, "Oh, I really like your drawings, can you do one of my house?" and etc. And I think it's about practice. So some of the things you showed, I thought, well, wow, that's amazing, and I really like the tone on that, and how did you get that? And then I think, well, I can do that, I've just got to keep practicing and
keep practicing.
It'll come.
So students, I mean, one of the things, many questions you get from students when they join the School of Architecture, they say, well, what sort of work do the students do when they're there? I've got a little exhibition here. I'll click on this and it'll run it through. I'll try and quickly speak over it. But if we click on the guide, you'll see that we walk into a studio, and I think it may do it, depends on my internet connection. There we go. We go inside the studio. This is a collection of some of the first year work that's been done. They build the models. They're given design project briefs to work up. You have to have inspiration. You create models. You can create models from mesh. This is a sort of pavilion project that they did in first year. for Studio 1B. Our studios work in a sequence of 20 credit modules. This is one for an educational little building that was done for mental health, school children, housing projects in second year under Studio 2A, a variety of sites we choose across, well, Wales or further afield if we can do. We look at refurbishments of historic buildings and extensions to historic buildings within our second year. It's a pretty diverse range of things. Outdoor super sports centre, sort of, I mean, with beach activities as part of our second year Studio 2C. Third year, we look at master planning of towns and cities, and this is a master plan block with insertions of buildings within a context, and those buildings are then worked up. They're much more complicated buildings, but all the students have started with sketches like this on the left and progressed through to the fine Revit model versions you see on the left there, which are 3D CADed and hand-drawn and computer-generated forms that you see within this sort of very quick exhibition, which is on loop. I could spend ages walking around this, but I just don't want to feel that, you know, you're intimidated by that. It's just that it's actually all part of just getting some drawings together, starting off with very simple things. You can't beat a piece of paper and a pencil at the end of the day, and you don't need anything more complicated than that to study architecture. It might sound bonkers, but it's true. Or even if you've got a decent camera, it helps. But, you know, there are other things you can get. But they're all part of, like Liz said, it's the practice really that makes the difference. Practicing drawing skills, practicing techniques is what gets you to a level of confidence that you can then find that you can, you know, experiment more with your forms and your designs in the context of the design project brief that you're given.
If I could add, Ian, the more and more I speak to people of you know, the younger generation, shall we say, the 15-year-olds to the 25-year-olds, and they look at me and say, "What's this dinosaur going on about pencils? You know, we've got CAD and we've got AutoCAD and we've got Revit and we've got 3D rendering and all sorts of stuff. You trust me, you design with a pencil. You design, and that pencil is attached to your arm, which is attached to your brain, and the CAD stuff and everything else comes later. You use that then for the pretty pictures and the technical detailing, but you can learn, design, make mistakes, correct those mistakes so much more efficiently with a pencil in your hand, and the computer is just that extension. Once you're aware of what you're wanting to create, the computer then then takes over, but the initial work is done with a pencil, and as far as I'm concerned, always will be. So that's why this development of portfolio is so critical, that you get into the habit of doing these little drawings.
Yeah,
I would completely agree with that, because when you go to site and the client says, "I'd like the door here," if you can draw, you can then sketch out why you can't have the door in that position and persuade the client that.
Yeah, I mean, and
you don't
no,
have Revit on site, do you?
No, I mean, some architects have, you know, have made their whole careers on that basis, that, you know, it's the drawings, the most important thing that's generated the ideas. And, you know, I know Richard Rogers passed away recently, but Richard Rogers' little sketches of some of the buildings that, you know, he worked on to initiate the design are, you know, they're invaluable. And they're always the things that people seem to collect or they put into books. It's funny, you know, the worked up, highly rendered final drawings, they don't really. I mean, you know, I think if I remember when the Pompidou Centre was designed, when he was designing that, I think they were drawing on the bath. They had a door on the bath because they didn't have enough space to draw, and they had the paper on a door on the bath, and somebody was in the bathroom drawing. I mean, I just felt that was, you know, talk about hands-on, and it doesn't matter, you know, you could be on a train going somewhere, and somebody says to you, "Well, you know, what do you think about this? Should we design this differently?" And a number of times I've found that in practice, that we've had to think on our feet and produce sketches that are just done, like I said, on the back of a napkin or whatever, just to get that across. Funny enough, they all end up in your portfolio because, you know, you think that was a good idea, I'll keep that one, and you look back through books and your doodle books Doodling is really great. I mean, people knock it. They think you're distracted. You might be in physics and doodling, and I know everybody was doing that. But actually, some of those drawings are really important. I look back on them and think I was sort of told off for doodling in books, but actually I realised actually they can make a living out of it, because then you can come on and you can work on buildings and such like. I'm just hoping that gives you all of you that may be worried about portfolios a bit of comfort to know that actually there is a way, and you don't always get this advice when you're at school or college, but we often find the frustration is the first time I come in contact with the students is when they put an application in, and I don't want them to feel, I didn't want you guys to feel that actually, there's not a door you can knock on and ask a question. And you can always contact us and ask us. We're quite happy to come back to you and say, well, why didn't you have a look at this? And, and we've done that. And I've had some lovely portfolios in from students this year that are applying for our course. And I will write back to them and tell them what I think of it, and give them a nudge. It's got to be constructive feedback that they get in all cases, to say, oh, have a go at this or try that. And more often than not, you'll find they'll come back at you and say, I've had a look at this again. What do you think of this? And it is part of that progression. It really does pay off. The more that you can practice stuff and just give it a go. Just give it a go. You've got nothing to lose. Any questions from the team? Anybody would like to know about the course, or would they like to any information about the sort of portfolio presentation tonight?
If no one's going to jump in and ask a question, Ian, I've dropped mine and your email addresses into the chat box. ian.standen@uwtsd.ac.uk, and I'm r.stuckey. The R stands for Ryan, but I'm special. I only get an R. I don't get a Ryan dot at uwtsd.ac.uk. I'm like one of those Brazilian footballers. I've just got one name. And just drop us a line, and any queries, no matter how mundane they are, we'll try our best to get back to you ASAP and answer your questions about any aspect of the course, really.
Are anybody online actually applying this year, or anybody in sort of lower 6th, year 12 or whatever are thinking of applying? Is there anybody actually applied this year that's online at the moment who's not too shy to say yay or nay? Is it of any use to you guys to try to give you that sort of steer about the about portfolio development? You've applied this year. Kate, sorry, Kate's applied. Is that Andrew as well?
Sorry.
I can hear you. Say that again.
Yeah, my name is Sheetal.
Yes. Hi, Sheetal.
Yeah, hi. Actually, I did my diploma in civil engineering, and I'm from India. And here I'm trying to apply for top-up course for architecture, because my practice is in architecture. My previous job was like assistant architect. So in my portfolio, what should I include? Means my work project, one project, or anything other?
Well, I think, like I just said, if you may have worked on, obviously, so you've had some experience of practice, you may look at the work that you've done and try to extract from that work in whatever form some of the range of drawings that we may have shown here. So, some hand-drawn sketches, maybe some details, as Ryan mentioned, that you've worked up. If you've got to the stage of construction, for instance, is it conceptual drawings? So basically ideas of certain things. It might have been the design of a staircase, for instance, that you may have started. I'm just trying to think back to my practice days of when we were working on maybe elements of the building and trying to generate similar sorts of drawings, creative drawings. It could be patterns. It could have been an interior design context that you're talking about. All that would be relevant for a student that maybe has got some practice experience that can show that, So for many of the students that may be online now, they're coming from maybe a school background and they haven't had that experience of practice. I'm trying to show here that it's an artistic influence. How many pages is one of the questions I got asked there for? Was it Kate asking about how many pages? I mean, I think if you've got a variety of things, tend to have you want probably 10 tops, to be honest. And I think then you will keep people's interest. You know what it's like. They say if you don't get your interest in the first minute, you lost it. You know. So something, you know, your wow factor, something that you think, oh, this is my best work. Put your best work into the portfolio, not too much text. So keep the text down to a minimum, work on the graphic or the image, I would suggest, because a drawing says 1,000 words, doesn't it? And I look at a section, through that gym shoe I showed you, it says a lot without having to describe what it is. And I think what happens, I think maybe it's sometimes at school, you end up, or you're asked to put a lot of text or text to support your development. So in a portfolio, just think, you know, take it back, think about it. That does it do what I want it to say? You know, in minimum words, really. You know, this is a town study of, I don't know, a social housing. You know, textures for inspirational board. You know, mood board, for instance. Any other questions there? Did I miss?
Can I just add something? Ian mentioned about your model making skills and using that as part of a development of a portfolio. Very often you're not going to be able to carry around models to show off your model making techniques. So photography is important. However, we all know that, you know, the most basic of mobile phones can take a good photograph for this sort of purpose, but context and scale is really important. So very often someone might take a photograph of a model and I can't tell how big it is or how detailed it is. So try and put it next to something so that we've got an idea of its size and its form. So, you know, maybe it could be that you hold it in your hand so that we get an idea of that.
Of the scale aspect.
Yeah.
That's right. It's true. Yeah. I mean, I think what we do with you know, when we're not in COVID, you know, when we go to site and look at buildings, you know, we take a simple measure with us, so you can put the measure next to the detail that you're trying to draw, so you've got a scale almost immediate to get the proportions right. You know, simple things like that. I mean, the funny thing is, we had a detail the other day students were drawing, and they had no visual reference apart from a car, and it was a certain species of car, if you know what I mean. And they managed to look at the technical details on the website, and it said it was from the bumper to bumper, it was 3.03 meters. So they knew how big the object they were drawing was next to it. I thought that was brilliant. I mean, you can actually do that. You get more technical detail from the products, lampposts and stuff from online, and you'll be able to find out, you know, exactly. You can't do that with a giraffe, can you? You can't actually look at a picture of a giraffe and work out how big it is. That's the only snag. The technical detail's not there for that.
There's a really interesting building which is student accommodation by an architect called Stephen Hull in Chicago, I think. And I'm embarrassed to say I think, because I've actually been there and I can't remember whether it was there or Boston. But anyway, and each floor plate has 4 windows vertically and 4 windows horizontally for each room. So you'd think, well, why have you got 4 and 4? That's 16 windows for one room, but they're really small windows, no bigger than maybe 300 millimeters by 300 millimeters, a foot by a foot or a ruler by a ruler. When you stand back from the other field and look at this building, it's only actually 7 stories high, but it looks as if it's 28 stories high because it's played with your senses. You think that each window is a floor level, not 4 being a floor level. And it's only when you take photographs of it with a car in front of it do you realize that. Because there's photography of it where there is no context, and it's lit up at night, and you think, wow, that looks like a Manhattan skyline with these big skyscrapers, but it's actually only 7 stories in height. And architects tend to play a little bit with scale and size and shape to tease those senses and try and get you to think a little bit differently. I studied with a guy in South Bank University for a short while who created a scheme of a small domestic house, but he made all the bricks double the size that they normally are when you buy them off a shelf. So it really did challenge your senses as to, well, hang on a minute, that doesn't look quite right. That brick's that big, but the door is only this big, and it's so scale is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, talk about playing with emotions. You know, that the Daniel Libeskind Jewish Museum in Berlin, where he had all those steel plates on the floor with the faces of the people that had died in the Holocaust, and you had to walk over them to get to the next gallery, was pretty stirring. A very, very, very clever way of getting a very powerful message. And architecture has that ability to do that. We can change the mood and context. You can see that with the drawings are generated. If you can get that into the mind's eye and you get that into a finished building, imagine being in that space. And we do overlap with film and television design, because architecture is in many of these films depicted, both in terms of futuristic stuff that Sid Mead may have done. Like we said, we've got a student doing one on Christopher Nolan, the dissertation on Christopher Nolan this year. And so there is some blurring in terms of graphic design, product design, engineering into architecture, and I just like to think that whenever it comes on the course, we'll find that they develop the skills to go into whatever field they feel may suit them and their skill sets at some stage in the future. We're trying to give everybody a really good grounding in the skill set, so that they diversify. There are a number of architects who have gone into graphic design, and I mean, I remember Pink Floyd. I think Pink Floyd studied at South Central University in London architecture, and so did Janet Street Porter. And she became a television radio person, but she studied architecture to start with. So I'm saying it's quite an interesting subject to have under your belt.
Ian, we're teaching a generation of kids now whose parents don't even know who Pink Floyd are.
Pink Floyd. Maybe not, yeah. But maybe they do. It's quite interesting when you're looking at the wall like this one. Any other questions, guys? Any other useful things that you would like to extract from us tonight in terms of any help? Is the ones who applied already, I'm sure you're going to send your portfolio, so you may have done already, and I apologize. I will probably get through all those and come back to you individually and guide you and stuff. And if there's additional things to add into those, I'll give you that advice too. So don't worry. I don't need to stress about that. All I'm going to encourage you to do is keep going the rest of this year now, this academic year. Try to do your very best, and you can contact me any time about it. Well, you may have gone through the system of UCAS, but feel free, please, to contact me if you're concerned about anything. I mean, if you get to the point where your grades are coming out and you're worried about your grades, please get in contact again. And if things don't work out for you, still get in contact again. I'm just saying that we keep an open door, and I would hate to think that A levels are the last people should worry about them. They do have an impact on your life or whatever you're doing, but actually when you start architecture, you're sort of starting again, really. That's how I look at it anyway, because I can get away from all the teachers I had. It was brilliant, and hopefully you come to a nice bunch of teachers with us guys, and it's all good, so I don't want to... Brilliant. Okay, any other questions? If not, I think I can let you guys go and enjoy the rest of the evening, and hopefully speak to you soon. Would that be okay?
Andrew's typing a message here. Just a thank you. That's okay.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks guys. Nice to see you all, and I hope you come and join us for an open day and engage with us in future. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Emma. I'll stop the recording there.